Well, if you had strong opinions on John Hines, David Poile, or the Eeli Tolvanen situation before, what David Poile said yesterday is probably not going to make you unclench your fists any better. David Poile sounding off on the Eeli Tolvanen situation. We will talk about that very candid and also very loaded response, plus Preds Maple Leafs preview tonight, all coming up today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Preds your first listen of the day, every single day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast that's available to you wherever you get your podcast and, of course, on YouTube. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer and editor at ontheforecheck.com, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer and editor at insidethepreds.com.
So we were hoping for a nice, easy day today, and we had the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight. A fun team. 3 of the last 5 games between these two have been shutouts somehow. I don't know if that's going to be the key tonight. We also had a fun little would you rather thing. We had some banter planned.
I had some good ones.
We were excited, and then it is the clip that you guys have probably heard a million times by now. David Poile decided to weigh in on Eeli Tolvanen. So basically, we know Eeli Tolvanen. You probably remember Eeli Tolvanen, the guy who was waived, the former first-round pick. He is on a little bit of a hot run with the Seattle Kraken right now. He has 5 points in his first 5 games with Seattle, including 3 goals and a 2-point performance the other night for the Kraken on Saturday night. So yeah, there's a lot to take in about Eeli Tolvanen doing good. Just David Poile does a weekly appearance on 102.5 The Game. Maybe not a weekly appearance. He's on there from time to time talking about the team, either him or John Hines. And he did a clip with Robby and Rexrode in the morning. And Robby Stanley, longtime Preds guy, former Locked On Predators host, by the way. He asked David Poile about Eeli Tolvanen, referencing his hot start with Seattle. And he asked him basically just like, obviously you don't want to like focus too much on other teams and other players, but what was kind of the decision that went into, waiving Eeli Tolvanen? Like what was kind of the team thought process behind that? And the answer Poile gave, it's a lot to break down. So let's hear what Poile had to say. This is from appearance on 102.5 The Game yesterday. Let's play the clip.
Tried Tolvanen in lots of different situations with varying success. Where our team was going this year, it just didn't seem like he had a roster spot. I really believe if he's going to be successful, he needs to play in the power play, which is he's getting that opportunity in Seattle. And for us, he was just getting the second power play and some shorter periods of time to exhibit his offensive capabilities. And did we give him enough opportunities? Should we have played him higher? I think that time will tell. Seattle's a team that plays a little bit differently than us. They really rotate almost their 4 lines equally, and offensively they put him in a position higher than we have. So this could be a mistake on our part. That's on me if he turns out to be really successful, but we thought we tried him in a lot of different areas and different places. We were really hoping that we would get him through on waivers so that he could play in Milwaukee a little bit and then bring him back up. But we had to make some decisions. We were not going anywhere. And again, he's doing well, great for him, and we've been doing better. Not necessarily because of him, but because we've made a decision to go in another direction with different types of players. So
Okay.
here.
There's about 15 different parts of that to break down. Let's just lay it up. Let's just do a layup first, Anne. Overall thoughts.
Overall thoughts, kudos to David Poile for giving an honest answer. Because 9 times out of 10, when you ask somebody a question that in essence is, hey, did you screw this up? In essence, I mean, and also kudos to Robby Stanley for asking this question. I appreciate him asking this question. 9 times out of 10, when the essence of the question is, hey, did you screw this up? Somebody is going to find a way to say, it's not really my fault. Kudos to David Poile for saying, hey, this is on me. If this did not go well, this is on me. So I give him credit for that. I appreciate the breadth of the answer. I think he laid out some information that helps fill in the speculation around the Eeli Tolvanen move. I also think whether Poile intended this to be an answer that closes a chapter of Eeli Tolvanen, it is an answer and information that has taken a giant spoon to the cauldron and has just stirred the pot.
Yeah.
Bless.
Yeah, you're not going to I think the best way to say it is if you had a very strong opinion on Eeli Tolvanen one way or the other, it probably got much stronger after hearing these David Poile quotes.
Yeah. What did you think when you first heard this? What was kind of your initial impression of this?
I mean, my first thing was, wow, like that's as candid of a response as you'll get from an NHL GM. I mean, how many times do you hear an NHL GM be like, yeah, if he winds up being good, my bad, y'all.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't hear that. A lot of times, for some other general managers, and John Hines is kind of like this too, for some other teams, if let me say this, like if Peter Laviolette was asked that question, that response would have been 15, 20 seconds long.
And may have involved F you.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I don't think Laviolette was ever like that, but I think it was more of he's not going to say anything. He's just gonna be like, yeah, well, we decided to go in a different direction. And at the very least, you hear Poile, it's be like, you know what? We thought we tried him in a lot of different places. And we thought we gave him some opportunities and that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of parts to break down here.
Oh gosh.
So many individual parts of that. I guess the headline, the piece of that everybody is kind of grabbing onto, in headlines and that kind of stuff is David Poile saying, waiving Eeli Tolvanen could be a mistake, kind of in a time would tell situation. Yes. Probably.
Do you think it will? You think it is a mistake?
I mean, but that's the thing, Anne. To me, that's the part. That's the headline that everybody is talking about. But to me, that's like the thing about this that I have the least amount to talk about.
Yes.
Like I have more to say about so many other parts of that answer. But the thing about Eeli Tolvanen, could it be a mistake? Yeah, it could be. It also could be a move in retrospect, That's the thing is Eeli Tolvanen has played very good in 5 games with Seattle, but he has only played 5 games with Seattle. We don't have enough to say, Eeli Tolvanen is going to be like the big one that got away. He's going to like tear it up and score 20, 30 goals for another team. We also don't have enough to say Eeli Tolvanen is, he's going to cool off. He's going to lose a spot in the lineup, and he's going to be either in the AHL or, back in the Finnish league in 2 years. We don't know. This for now, the big thing is we can just be happy that Eeli Tolvanen is finding his stride somewhere. He's getting an opportunity somewhere, and he's making the most of it. And for Eeli Tolvanen, the person and the player who we both like,
yes,
that's something that we can celebrate. But, it's, that's the headline, waiving Eeli Tolvanen could be a mistake. Yeah, it could be. It could also just be, what winds up being okay, this player didn't work out type of move. We just
Right.
don't know that much yet. But that's
Mhm.
that's the headline that people are kind of grabbing onto.
Yeah. Yeah. But there are so many layers to this conversation that go so far beyond the Eeli Tolvanen, is this a mistake? And if it is, David Poile owns it. There are so many layers beyond that with the state of the Nashville Predators right now, with the state of the fan base right now, with the state of the big feelings going on about the general manager, about the head coach of the Nashville Predators, about the whole direction of the Nashville Predators. And I think this Eeli Tolvanen headline is a lightning rod for a number of other conversations. And so I think a lot of big feelings are being directed at this Eeli Tolvanen situation that are probably really about other things as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is like one of those like where you're like in an argument with your significant other, or like you see like two very toxic people in a relationship and they start fighting over like, whether or not you bought the right like peanut butter at the store or something like that. It's like it's probably not about that.
Yeah.
But at this point, I think people are going to look for any sort of thing to grab onto to say, yeah, that was a mistake.
Yes.
The other parts of this I want to talk about, and this is stuff that I do have, a lot to say about. And there's a couple of things. David Poile saying that they thought that he was going to go to Milwaukee, that was the goal, that they thought they were kind of going to get him through waivers. That's a big thing we need to talk about. Also, did the Preds really do everything they could to get Eeli Tolvanen going? That is a multifaceted conversation. And then this is kind of, there's so much headline-worthy stuff before that. But at the end where he said, we just needed to go, we just made some decision on different types of players. That, to me, is another big thing that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. So there is a lot more to this interview that we need to break down. We'll do that in a second, but first, want to take a second and mention today's show is brought to you by Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football playoffs to NBA, NHL, European soccer, golf, tennis, you name it. They've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts like the one you're listening to right now, wink, wink, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about all the trends, action lines, all that good stuff happening in tonight's games. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Anna, let's rewind a little bit. So we got about as we mentioned, the funny thing about this clip with 102.5 The Game and David Poile's interview on Eeli Tolvanen was David Poile saying, we could have made a mistake. That's the headline that people are grabbing onto.
Yes.
I think it's like the part of this that's maybe like the least amount of stuff to talk about. Let's go back to the start where David Poile is talking about, did we give Eeli Tolvanen enough opportunities to do something? I'm curious your thoughts on that, because he kind of made it sound like he was almost like kind of throwing up his hands. And it's like, well, we thought we, gave him lots of opportunities to do stuff.
That is I think it's an interesting point that is going to, again, be one of the things that David Poile says that draws ire depending on where you stand on the state of this team to begin with. This is either going to be something he says that is for or against where you already are. Did they give Eeli Tolvanen enough chances in the lineup? Yes and no. I think I really struggle with this one. If I'm just being totally honest, I would love to be able to give you a really hot take and stand 100% behind it and argue it forever. But I'm going to be really honest and say, I'm on the fence about this one. Now, in training camp this year, Eeli Tolvanen started out playing up on a second line with Johansson and Niederreiter. So I saw in training camp, they tried to kind of bump him into that spot. They also tried Phil Tomasino a little bit in training camp at that spot. So they tried some of that. Eeli Tolvanen did not get a lot of consistent top 6 minutes just across the board from when he's been up here. He just did not get a lot of consistent top 6 minutes. Would that have made a difference?
I mean, he did last year.
Would you really say that he had consistent top 6 minutes last year?
I mean, he spent more time in that top 6 than maybe anybody else that was in that situation. Maybe besides Luke Cunnin, because, Tolvanen kind of got bumped down the lineup, down the stretch.
Yeah.
But for the vast majority of that season, Ann, like, Tolvanen spent a lot of time in that top 6. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, because I have my own point on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, I guess, the devil's advocate to that is like, hey,
Right.
They did play him a lot in the top 6 last year, and he didn't really do much.
My thing is consistent. He didn't ever really get a long stretch. Having said that, that is also not something that John Hynes typically does for any player. So I'm not saying that Eeli Tolvanen was robbed, because consistently John Hynes is very upfront about this. You get playing time based on your performance. So there aren't a lot of players who are getting consistent. I see your face. You think I can't see your face, but your face is seen. If y'all are listening to this on an audio platform, you didn't see Nick's face, but you know what his face was.
Yeah.
John Hynes is upfront about your performance dictates your playing time. And so with that kind of being the framework that he coaches from, a lot of players don't necessarily get consistent minutes when they're struggling to work through that with line mates in a top 6 role. So I would say Eeli Tolvanen didn't have a long stretch of time to work through any hiccups in his game in the top 6. He had lots of time in the bottom 6.
Yeah.
So I go back and forth on that. Did he have enough time? But here's the thing with John Hynes, and you can like it or you can not like it, but you have to perform on the ice to get ice time with John Hynes. And they didn't feel like Eeli Tolvanen did that. Go ahead and tell me what your face means.
I mean, you know what it means. It's like, yeah, you're playing the ice determines your playing time for certain players. Because, I mean, let's be honest. There are some players, both last year and this year, that are getting seemingly longer leashes. Let's just get that part out of the way right away. I agree with you on I do think you need some consistent playing time, and part of that is on Eeli Tolvanen, because as we mentioned, whether it was last year or the very limited time he was on the ice this year, he was I would say at best average. He had his moments, but was very kind of average the last 2 years, a far cry from when we first saw him come in the lineup during that COVID late start year, when he was just, it seems like everything he touched was golden. That being said, Eeli Tolvanen was 22 last year, 23 this year. He is not anywhere close to where he's going to be as a player. He wasn't anywhere close to that last year. And I agree with you. I think that players like Eeli Tolvanen, when you're young, need long stretches to kind of play themselves out of, bad stretches or average stretches. Like, you need some time and you need a long leash to kind of be like, okay, you know what? You're kind of having, you had a bad defensive game. You weren't really attacking the net, whatever the thing is, time to kind of take that feedback and be like, okay, I'm going to go out in the same spot with the same people I've been working with, and I'm going to have a chance to kind of focus on what my coaches are telling me. It didn't seem like he had that. I mean, we talked about that with Cody Glass earlier this year too. It's like you need that long leash. Cody Glass has that long leash now, and look what's happening. He's playing some of the best hockey of his life.
But did Cody Glass I struggle with that because everybody was frustrated that he was a healthy scratch for as long as he was.
Mhm.
When Cody Glass came back in the lineup, he was playing NHL caliber hockey. It wasn't that he came back in and worked his way out of it with a longer leash. It's that when he came back in the lineup, he was ready.
But here's the thing. It's also, we had situations where Cody Glass, would start the game, make a mistake, and then he wouldn't play the rest of the game. And it's like, okay, how much of a chance are you playing him? Like, do you do that with every player? Like if Philip Forsberg and Matt Duchene have played some bad defensive hockey this year, you don't see them getting benched for long stretches of games. Then guess what happens? Then they turn around and have like a 4-point performance the next night. And why? It's because they know it's like they have the ability to shake off that mistake and go out and play. You need young players to kind of have the same thing to find that rhythm. And I think in all of this conversation, the biggest detriment to development of Eeli Tolvanen was that the Preds started winning games last year. Remember, they were dead set on this being a competitive rebuild where they were kind of moving the core around. And then the Preds wound up with the best record in the Western Conference last year about January. And all of a sudden, your thought process changed from, we're going to be patient. We're going to move this core towards our younger players. And we are going to try to do what we can to win now. And that's when the leash got short. That's when you saw Eeli Tolvanen start getting bumped down the lineup. That's when you started seeing him being a healthy scratch.
Do you disagree with that decision?
Do what?
Do you disagree with that thought process?
I don't disagree with the thought process. Mm-hmm. I think that's ultimately kind of what hurt his development with the Preds. You can argue whether or not the Preds should have left their competitive rebuild they were going into. I think that's a different conversation. But if you're going to win, I don't disagree with bumping him down the lineup if he's not performing. This year, I think it wound up maybe being a case of, they just kind of ran out of time with him because they loaded up, man. I mean, they brought a lot of people into this team, and the expectation was to win this year. And then when it didn't happen, that's when you started seeing, Eeli Tolvanen basically had zero leash. I mean, he would play one game, look average, and then was a healthy scratch, the next 3 games. Mm-hmm. They had no window to get him up to speed. Now it seems like, if the rumors are true, I mean, the Preds are playing very well right now, but if the rumors are true and they're looking to maybe rebuild part of this lineup, I mean, you look around and Tommy Novak is playing, top line minutes, and Juuso Parssinen is in the lineup getting a very, very long leash. Even some players like Mark Jankowski, who came up from the AHL, they're getting opportunities. And it's like, you wonder maybe if the Preds had waited a little bit longer, or that Tolvanen did get through waivers. We're going to talk about that part of it in a second.
Gotta get to that.
Did get through waivers and come back up, maybe Tolvanen has the leash that he needs to get going. But it just seems like, whether, I guess to sum up my point is, did the David Poile give him enough opportunities? Yes, but also not the, I guess, in the time frame that he needed. Yeah, I guess the answer is yes or no, but I think the development of Eeli Tolvanen was hurt by the fact that the Preds wanted to go and load up and win this year, and they just simply could not have the patience that Tolvanen needed to kind of grow his game.
Yeah, I would agree that there's a lot in the timing and circumstance that affected Eeli Tolvanen here in Nashville. You talked about the waiver situation, and I think this is something that we're going to need to spend a few minutes diving into. So let's talk about what David Poile had to say about Eeli Tolvanen. We thought he would clear waivers. Go ahead and give it to me.
I think it's extremely naive of David Poile
Really?
to think that Eeli Tolvanen was going to get through waivers untouched. Now, he didn't come right out in the interview and say, yeah, we thought Eeli Tolvanen was gonna go through. But what he said did give some credence to the Sean Shapiro tweet back when Tolvanen was claimed by Seattle that said the Preds were pretty confident that he would clear. And we're never going to know how many teams were really interested. Seattle was 24th?
They were down there, yes.
24th in the waiver order. So there's at least 23 teams, the 23 worst teams, including a lot of up-and-coming rebuilding teams that were like, pass.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll never know like how close to being true that was, but that's a big risk to think that no one in the NHL is going to want to take a chance on a 2017 first-round pick who has shown scoring pop in the NHL. It was going to be very naive to think that not one team would be willing to take a flyer, whether it's a team that, is looking for, depth scoring, maybe a team that's like looking for more long-term projects, or just a team that's like horribly injured and needs some players in their lineup right now, like decent players in their lineup. It's naive to think that nobody is going to chance. Hey, remember, Eeli Tolvanen got drafted a year after Tage Thompson. Tage Thompson is a guy that looked like his development was peaking as like, no disrespect here, but peaking like Michael McCarron, just a tall dude who was playing on the fourth line. And now he is a legitimate MVP candidate because the Sabres had some patience with him.
Yeah.
It's very naive to think that not another NHL team is going to look at a former first-round pick who has some skills, has some very good skills, has displayed those skills on a somewhat consistent basis in the NHL, or at least in spurts, and look at it and say, yeah, we can take a chance here.
I also would say that I think it's very naive to think that David Poile went into this and said, I think he'll clear waivers. Let's do it. Yeah. I absolutely can't accept the fact that I think a lot of people think that David Poile was like, let's just put him on waivers. We'll get him to Milwaukee and he'll, do some work there and we'll bring him back up.
I think that was absolutely their hope.
I don't know. And this is why I find it hard to believe that David Poile didn't at least put some feelers out about a trade for Eeli Tolvanen at some point. No. So I think probably Poile had a pretty good read on the market when it came to something like Eeli Tolvanen. I also think that they had to have weighed this out and said, you know what, we're going to take a chance that he gets through to Milwaukee, knowing full well there's a chance that he doesn't. Because honestly, what was going to happen for Eeli Tolvanen in Milwaukee that was going to drastically change his role being brought back up to the Nashville Predators eventually? I can't imagine that they really felt like something very drastic was going to develop and happen in Milwaukee. Like, I feel like it was weighed and measured, and they said, you know what, let's try to get him through waivers. But I think they had to know full well there's a good chance that Eeli Tolvanen was going to get picked up. And I really do think that they made the call that, like, let's hope for the best, but let's be realistic that probably he'll get picked up. I don't think, despite what David Poile said, I don't think that the Predators went into that decision naively saying, hey, let's just put him on waivers. Nobody's going to pick him up. We'll develop him in Milwaukee. Like, and I feel like a lot of people think David Poile is dumb. And just, wasn't people look, I read Twitter. I really do think this was weighed and measured, and this was a risk the Predators were willing to take for Eeli Tolvanen. And I'm not sure that they feel really horrible about it. Like, I love that David Poile owned this, but I feel like they weighed this out and said, you know what, this is a risk that's worth taking for what we're getting from Tolvanen right now.
I mean, yeah, I mean, in that situation, Tolvanen either goes to Milwaukee and spends a little bit more time at least playing some minutes, or, you know, he gets claimed by another team, and what happens is you're losing a player that you weren't playing anyway, or that you
Right.
didn't see a spot for him this season. And that's something that Poile admitted in the end. He's like, you know, he wasn't, you know, you heard him say it. It's like, you know, we really thought to be successful, he needed to be doing this and he needed to be doing this. And, you know, the way the team was this year, we just didn't see him kind of getting that spot. And that's fair. Like, that's a very fair thing. You know, it's just kind of a matter of when the Preds start transitioning, and some of those players go, and you do start shuffling some of these younger guys into those high profile roles. I think that's when you're going to look back and say, yeah, maybe Eeli Tolvanen could be used here. But again, that goes us back to the headline about, was Eeli Tolvanen being waived could be a mistake? We just don't know the answer to that question, Dan. Like, for all this talk about it, Eeli Tolvanen just could wind up being a mid player.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't know that yet. He very well could be a 30-goal scorer in Seattle, and we would love to see it because we like Eeli Tolvanen.
Yes.
We want to see every NHL player succeed who's not wearing a Chicago Blackhawks or Anaheim Ducks jersey.
Or Corey Perry.
But we just don't know the answer to that question, though, Ann.
Yeah.
But the big one, and again, this is I guess a place to kind of close this discussion. The last thing Poile said was, we made a decision to go in the direction of some different types of players. I think the type of players he's kind of referencing there, do you think that's kind of the best move long term? Or do the Preds miss an opportunity to maybe get some stuff going with some of your more skilled players?
I guess where I come down on this, because I know this is part of the frustration with David Poile, and there is a lot of frustration right now among the Twitter fan base. I'm not sure if it's across all fan base, the entire Nashville Predators fan base, but the vocal majority are very frustrated with John Hynes and David Poile. And I think I'm just going to throw this out on the stoop and see what the cat licks up. Okay. Just let's just see what happens here.
There's a better way to phrase that, but go ahead.
Could we all just get to a point where we can acknowledge in agreeing with the decisions that the Predators have made regarding Eeli Tolvanen, regarding a competitive rebuild, regarding, lineup decisions? Can we all just get to a point where we can just acknowledge the fact that David Poile is the winningest GM in the NHL? He has been doing this job since before there were push button phones attached to walls. Okay. That he has done this for 3 different organizations, that he has done this for the United States Olympic team, for the national team. He's won GM of the Year award. Is he making all these great decisions? No, but I would love to see this fan base at least acknowledge the fact that perhaps, let's just see if we can all agree that perhaps David Poile, who has daily conversations with his coaches, with his players, is at the practices, is in conversation with general managers across the league. Perhaps he has a larger pool of information from which to draw from to make these decisions. Can we just acknowledge that?
It is very fair. I think that is a very fair point. And who knows, as we can have our opinions, but as far as we as fans go, we're just along for the ride.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we just got to remember to buckle up and enjoy the ride.
It's sports.
It is sports. Speaking of sports, Ann, didn't even talk about this. Hey, by the way, the Predators play a game tonight. Predators take on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Preds have a 4-game win streak going on right now. They play another high-octane offensive team in the Maple Leafs. Real quick, what do you think is a big key to this one?
I think a big key to this one, and I hate to say this out loud. I hate to say this. I hate to even put it out there, but I think a big key is goaltending because Toronto has a lot of scorers. They have been putting up a lot of goals in their games. This is a team that is beatable, but Nashville is going to have to continue to play at the high level that they have been playing at these last 4 games. This is a game that's going to reveal how could the Nashville Predators do if they make it into the playoffs, because Toronto, this is a playoff caliber team. So a lot of this is going to come down to goaltending. I hate that for UC Saros or Kevin Lankinen. Hate it.
I'm guessing UC Saros tonight and Lankinen tomorrow in Montreal.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? What is the key to this game for the Predators?
I think it's going to have to be limit the mistakes. Look, Toronto is very deadly on the power play. Mm-hmm. They have these high scores. You cannot get into a game where you're gifting them chances, whether it's turnovers, whether you botch a zone exit, or a zone entry, or turn the puck over in the neutral zone, something like that, or taking a dumb penalty at an absolutely dumb time. You cannot give this Toronto core chances to score. And I will say, maybe they're one chink in the armor. They're very good defensively this year, 5-on-5, and they have some really good goaltending. Maybe their one weakness is a penalty kill.
Yes.
Yeah, they're only 17th on penalty kill percentage. That's where a lot of teams are getting a lot of goals against the Maple Leafs this year. The Predators' power play has been better over the last few weeks of the season. Can they keep that going and maybe continue that upward trend? We'll have to see. That might be the difference for the Preds tonight as well.
Agreed. Yeah. Special teams could be a big difference. And God love you, Jeremy Lazan, there are no snacks in the sin bin.
Please.
Even if you check 4 times, still not snacks.
There are no Built Bars there.
No.
It is a 6 o'clock or 6:30 puck drop Central Time, and it's on TNT. So it is a national game tonight. Interesting to see what the national pundits will have to say about the Preds situation, because I'm sure they'll weigh in on that.
Yeah.
We will have full recap of that game coming on tomorrow. Who knows? There may be more crazy sound bites to talk about between now and then. Until we get there, Ann, where can people find your work?
You can find my work online at InsideThePreds.com. You can find me on Twitter at ANK_Mama on Ice.
And you can find me at ontheforecheck.com. Follow me on Twitter at _NSMorgan. And while you're there, be sure to follow the show at LO_Predators. However you're listening to this podcast, whether you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform or watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Really helps us out, and you'll know when we have new content out for you. That's going to do it for us on today's Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow with an all-new episode. We'll see you then.